and they're watching the priest hold up the Eucharist, and everybody's on their knees, and like what are they going to think? Like what is this? This was completely foreign to me. This was like walking into a country that was unmapped. So there was one thing that almost kept me from becoming Catholic. No, it wasn't doctrine. It wasn't Mary. It wasn't purgatory. It wasn't the Eucharist. It wasn't the Pope. It was actually much more simple and much more common. Growing up in this area, a big thing is community. Obviously, you can have community anywhere you go. It doesn't matter. But community has always been a point of emphasis, especially in the area that I'm from, which is the Appalachian Mountains. One of the things that I love about the Protestant church, particularly in the evangelical world of the Protestant church, is their focus on community building. A lot of churches around here, these evangelical churches, they will start their foundation of their church on community building. Particularly, a lot of churches around here, they do a lot of stuff with teens, with a lot of young people. That's where they will start their foundation and build their church up from there. Youth groups are a huge thing around here. Small groups are a huge thing around here. Getting together outside of church is a huge thing around here, particularly for these evangelical Protestant churches. Now, I know that in larger areas, there's that stuff in all churches. I get that. I'm not here to say that this is just a one of a kind thing here. I know that that's not the case. But in this area, there's not a lot of people here. If you've been here long enough, you know everybody. So if you can establish a youth group or a small group or just a community with your church and you can have a ton of people in it, that's a big deal around here. I went to this church for years, since I was about 16, 17 years old, from all the way up till I was dang near 30 years old. I went to this one church, and it was the biggest church around here. And I walked into the youth group, started going to youth there, and immediately the youth group went on trips. We went to a huge conference, a Christian conference in Gatlinburg, Tennessee every year, and it was awesome. And I wasn't in there long because I joined when I was like 17, so I wasn't in there but like a couple of years. But the community part of it was amazing, and it was just a bond that was built. And then when you get older, you join into small groups and you do all sorts of things. So if you can build a big enough community in this area, if you have a big enough reach, a big enough church, you can really build like a moving church-based community. If you've ever been lucky enough to experience a true like church community, your church family, consider yourself blessed. It's amazing. It's one of those things where it turns into, you go to class a couple times a month, or you get together and you play basketball or whatever it is. You have a breakfast or whatever. It gets to the point where you're not only just hanging out then, but they're coming to birthdays and graduations and maybe even holidays they're stopping in, or you're maybe going out with each other on the weekends every once in a while. Like it turns into a real thing. Now, for people that live in bigger places or they have a wonderful community, you get all that. I know you get all that. But again, for me, for this area, it's hard to establish something as consistent as a true faith-based community. The church that I went to was huge, and I was very plugged in. And, I got to the point where I was on the Wednesday night, like acoustic praise team. And when that church sort of went through a transition and a lot of people left, we followed some people, and I joined the worship team on Sunday mornings at this new church. And it was all the same people that I had seen over the years and grew up with. And so the community never really left. When I started looking into Catholicism and really taking this serious, all the doctrines and all that came pretty easy. You have the Pope, you have Mary, you have all these different things, tradition. None of that really, I never hesitated on any of that to say, hey, this is weird. This is kind of weird. I don't think I'm going to join because of this. No, I worked all that out. Even if I had questions about certain things, I worked a lot of that out, and I had no issue with it. And it was surprisingly very easy. The teachings and the tradition and all that, it was surprisingly easy, particularly like the Marian dogmas. I had no issue with that. Okay. You want to say that Mary was a perpetual virgin and she was bodily assumed into heaven. Great. I believe that. That's cool. I have no issue with that. The one thing I had the most issue with and the hardest time was leaving the community that I had been in basically my entire adult life. This was something that I wrestled with for a long time. In these Protestant churches, these evangelical churches, they have a huge emphasis on children's church. While you're going to church at whatever time your service is, 11 o'clock or whatever, while you're in there, your kids go to a different room in the back and they do children's church. And so you're not sitting together. And I know that's not the same in all churches, but this is where I was. But your kids, they wouldn't sit with you. You would go to the main service and then your kids would be in the back having their own separate service. And they would, it depends on your age, they would have different age groups. A lot of the classes for these kids were fun. They had videos and dances and they made crafts, arts and crafts. And when I knew that I had to go to the Catholic church, this is not a Catholic area. I walked into the Catholic church and didn't know anybody. After knowing people personally for years, for a decade plus, from going somewhere much smaller. I went from a church to having 700 people. 500 of them I knew, 200 of them I knew personally, from going to a church with like 30 people regular and not knowing anybody. This parish, we don't have children's church. There's not really any small groups. There's nothing like that. It's just a very bare bones church. And this is not a Catholic community. And so these things go through your mind. You say, okay, well, what about my kids? If I take my kids here, are they going to get burned out like really quick? Are they going to get bored and think this is stupid? And are they going to just not walk, they're going to walk away from the faith when they get older because, the church was not like when they were real little and they, there's things that go through your mind, and as stupid as they may sound, you think about those things. You think, man, are my kids, are they going to enjoy this? Is this going to burn them out? Because the Mass is something that is completely, it's wild, it's odd in this area. But this is something that's super foreign. I mean, it's really like if an alien got zapped down on the sidewalk and you would look at it and be like, you would be in awe. You'd be like, what in the world? That's kind of how it is here. Like the Mass is, it's weird. Right? From what we're used to. Now I find it so beautiful and I feel transformed every time I walk out of the Mass. But at first, you're like, this is different. This is super foreign. And I'm like, what do my kids think? They're going from having fun in class. They're eating snacks and they're making arts and crafts and they're playing games and they're dancing. And then they're going to the Mass and they're watching the priest hold up the Eucharist and everybody's on their knees and like what are they going to think? Like what is this? Are they going to reject this somehow? Like you think about all those things and then you think about your spouse, or I think about my wife and I'm like, my wife, she grew up Methodist and then fell away from the church. And this is not my story to tell, this is hers, but fell away from the church for some certain reasons. And when we got married, she came back to church with me and she loved it. She absolutely loved the church we were going to. What is she going to think? Is she going to hate me for this? Like, is she going to, it's this sense of community. And then again, there's nobody to sort of reach out to. We don't know anybody in this church. Again, growing up, now I'm sure that I talked to somebody who was Catholic, I'm sure, but I didn't know personally. I didn't know anybody that was Catholic. There's not any family members that I knew that were Catholic. This was completely foreign to me. This was like walking into a country that was unmapped. What are you supposed to do? And as the husband, as the leader, as a child of Christ, as a child of God, I knew that this is where I had to be, but the community that I was in before almost made me not do it. I was scared to leave that community. But this is what I realized. And I want to tell this to people who, if you're going through this issue or you have gone through this issue, I want to let you know something. God will take care of you. If you lead your family as you are called to do, if you are called to be a leader, He will take care of you. It may not be perfect the way we want it to be, but He will take care of it in His way. If you come in and you say, hey, look, this is what we need to do. I know this is true. I know this may seem difficult, but this is the truth. And we're called to always abide by the truth. And we're always called to abide by God. This is the church that Christ established. This is where we have to go. If you lead and lead with conviction and lead with that truth, everything will fall into place eventually. Like I said, it may not be perfect and it may not be the way you want it to be, but continue to strive to be that leader and to be that faithful, fearless child of God. This was incredibly difficult. I lost a lot of sleep really over the community. I still talk to some of these people if I see them in passing and all that, and they're just as friendly as they have always been. But some of them I don't see anymore. But it is different now. It's different. Now, maybe topics are a little bit different. The conversation may be a touch different. It's been a little bit difficult, but rest assured, it's going to be okay. I said it in a previous videos. Be okay. Be comfortable with being uncomfortable. God is worth it. God is always worth it. Everything is going to be okay. Be that fearless leader, be that Christian, be that child of God that God wants you to be.